Why win one time and lose another time? What was the difference maker in the same district? And do people ever brawl there, or is this super polite? Like, no, I'm serious, because like progressives and more conservative members really disagree on a bunch of things. I mean, I think they do. They say they do publicly. So do they disagree internally? Tell me what you think is the right direction for the Democratic Party.
People come at me with issues. I'm going to tell them, okay, I hear you, but here's what I think on the issue. If they don't, especially if it is different, and I'm going to vote the way that I feel that I need to vote, right? And the way that I feel that the people in the district who elected me want me to vote. A lot of those diversity issues that we were implementing were signed into law by Donald Trump.
All right, welcome back to the Young Turks. We're doing some interesting interviews here in the 8 o'clock hour for going forward. So joining me today in studio is Representative Gil Cisneros. Congressman, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
All right, so the congressman is from the 31st District of California. He's a Democrat. And he even has a podcast I was on called Who Dem?
Yes.
Which is kind of a fun podcast. It feels like a representative from Louisiana should have that podcast, or maybe Cincinnati, but still. Okay, so what I want to do is first, I want to get to know you, okay?
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about what the Democrats are going to do in Congress and what they're doing to oppose Trump. So where'd you grow up?
Grew up here in Southern California, a city called Torrance. It's where I was born. It was where I was raised. Went to high school there. Left as soon as 5 days after I graduated from high school. Went off and joined the Navy, and was off to boot camp, and never kind of really went back there since. Right, but Southern California is my roots. It's where my family still is here. It's where me and my wife have settled, and it is home.
What did your parents do?
My dad, was a Vietnam veteran. He kind of, he worked for a company it was Reynolds Metal. They made aluminum cans. He did that for a long time, over 20 plus years. And then one day they just kind of said, oh, you know what, we don't need you anymore. So then he kind of just, tried to get back and kind of did odd things. He actually kind of got into TV in a little bit. Like he worked for directing shows on a home, like a shopping network, kind of like
really?
A small, like little. Well, I mean, it wasn't huge or anything, but they sold jewelry and things like that. He kind of did that for a little while too.
Maybe it was an Alcoa fantastic finish after all. Okay, but so your dad's basically a blue collar guy, right? And so you guys are California, right?
Right.
What, for a lot of folks don't know what that means. What does that mean?
I don't know, actually, but from California, right? Our family was from here. This is where our roots are. People say like, well, we used to always get asked like, well, when did your family move to California? And my family's always been in California. We've got, we didn't come here. The United States came to us.
Okay, so your family was here before California became a state. Okay, that's kind of badass. Right. It feels a little Yellowstone. Okay, so that's neat. Okay, so what did you do for a living after the Navy?
So I went and worked at Frito-Lay for a little bit.
CEO, CFO, what are we talking about?
I was a manager, I kind of ran different shifts, right? So I was first in the shipping, ran the third shift in the warehouse and shipping and distribution. Then after doing that for about 3 years, I moved over to the manufacturing side and pretty much ran the Funyuns and Munchies team there for, on the first shift there for a little while. So, basically like right there, I had a team of people that kind of worked and made the product. And but I always say like, my connection to people, right, is I stood the midwatch, on the ship, and then I worked the night shift. As well, like, at Frito-Lay. So I've kind of done those things, and I think it's connect, right? It's I had real jobs, done real things that people do so it's my connection to people, I think, and people really I think that's what helped me connect with them.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you had real jobs, you're a real American, and although I am looking forward to the Funyun caucus in the Congress. A little bit of mix of fun and onion. Maybe it's a little satirical. Plus, you get to hand out the snacks. Fun for everyone. Munchies caucus could also work, but okay. So that's great. That's an all-American story. So then, wait a minute. What happened? How'd you get here?
I left Frito-Lay. Making chips was not something that I think I wanted to continue to do with my life, and I did kind of, I got out of the Navy, right? And I did feel like there was a void as far as like serving and really kind of contributing. And so I was looking to do what was going to come next, and then just happened to go get dinner one day at an L&L barbecue, and saw they had a lottery machine and said, well, along with my chicken dinner, why don't you give me 10 lottery tickets too? And believe it or not, I actually won.
So, how you like them apples? You like barbecue? How you like that kind of barbecue?
Yeah, so it was a life-changing experience that allowed my wife and I to start our foundation that we put money into, a big portion of our winnings in there, and we started focusing on educational issues around college access programs, college scholarships, other things. But the thing that I saw, at that time we were living in Pico Rivera, California, and I was seeing a lot of the kids that were trying to go, wanted to do more, right? They wanted to go to college, they wanted to make more of themselves, but they didn't really know how to do it. And they faced a lot of the same obstacles or challenges that I faced when I was coming up, right? There was nobody in my family went to college, there was nobody to ask. And a lot of these kids had that same issue. And so we tried to really kind of focus and really kind of help them navigate the process, because a lot of them didn't know how to do that.
So what was the name of the restaurant again?
L&L Hawaiian Barbecue.
Oh, yeah. At a Hawaiian barbecue, and they're selling lottery tickets. What were the chances?
Yeah.
And boom, you hit the double rainbow.
Right.
Okay, so, and it was not a little winnings. It wasn't like sometimes, it was a scratch off. Oh, nice, 5,000, nice. Yeah. Right? No, it wasn't one of those.
No, it was life changing. It was we took the lump sum, but the winning was $266 million.
Jeez, Lord mercy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
God bless, man. But look, you immediately do philanthropy after that. That's beautiful, helping other people come up.
Right.
So that's, you would want someone like you to win the lottery, right?
Yeah.
Instead of the guy who's like, Ferrari, woohoo. Yeah. Wait, did you get a Ferrari?
No, I did have, I had the same truck for 14 years. I did get a new car. I got a Denali, was their first.
Okay. Oh, that's chow. That's no big deal.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in fact, that makes it feel more all-American. You got a Denali, got a big truck. Okay. Your nickname is going to be Yellowstone soon.
Okay.
Okay, so random. Anyways, all right, so that's an amazing story. Usually the lottery guys, though, eventually like spend it all, become super depressed and stuff. Did any of that happen?
Most winners, right, go through, I think it's like 5 to 7 years between they go through all their winnings and they've kind of lost everything. Look, this is why I thank God for my education, and that's when I really say I really won the lottery, because I think it's kind of allowed us to take an educational approach about how we do this and make sure that we do everything with a purpose, and try to be, I don't want to say frugal, but we don't overextend ourselves or do more than we can, right? And we are careful with our winnings and make sure that we don't take risky chances with it. And it's allowed us to kind of be able to kind of do that and kind of continue to live, right? Live to enjoy the fruits of our labor, as we would say, but the labor was the lottery winnings.
So, man, that is just the best meal you ever got. That I am stuck on the fact that it was at a restaurant. Anyways, I'm gonna get to politics in a second, but you got kids?
I do. I have twin boys, 11 years old. Christopher
they're
and
11
Alexander.
now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, are you worried about them getting spoiled because the money now? Are you guys super careful about that?
We just told them last year.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, that makes sense, because you wouldn't tell a 3-year-old and 7-year-old.
Right, and it was something that they were starting to hear from their friends, right? Because now everybody can get on Google, and they're at that age now where they can look things up and see things. And
believe me, I know.
Yeah, and so we just kind of really shared the story with them. But they're good kids, right? And they are actually kind of, I will say, cautious of that too, right? And I think we brought them up the same way. They don't, they save their money. They don't assume they're going to get anything. Believe it or not, they actually like to fly coach. and kind of.
That is hard to believe.
Yeah.
Because if I won the lottery, the very first thing I would do is never fly coach again.
Right.
Because I've flown coach way too many times in my life.
No.
I got the battle scars.
Yeah, but they, they take that stuff into consideration and they do it, right? And so we're very proud at how their approach to it, right? And they don't kind of make like, oh yeah, we won the lottery, and it's like, great.
Yeah, no,
they're not like that at all.
All right, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, can I ask you, how old are you?
I am 54.
54. So you got started late, like I did.
Yeah, with kids, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you get started after the lottery or before the lottery?
It was after. So we even that.
Were you like, oh, that's it, man? We're making kids. We got enough money.
Well, it was a process for us, right? We needed. I'm not ashamed to kind of say it, right? But we needed science to kind of help us out, right? So,
God bless science.
I think we had the boys about 4 years after everything, after the lottery had happened.
Yeah.
But
yeah, okay, that makes sense. You were trying all along.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so now what pops into your head to run for Congress at that point? Because look, at that point you already won the lottery. I mean, you could spend the rest of your life in Bahamas, help some kids, etc. But like, you don't have to do anything.
I think it was 2016. I think a lot of people, after the election this time around, are kind of angry and they want change. And in 2016, I was the same way. I was like, how did this happen? How did we let this guy get elected? What are Democrats doing wrong? What more could I do? And the more I became, well, maybe I can run for Congress. Maybe I can get involved. And look, when I say the lottery was life-changing, right? It changed things in many different ways, and we started to get involved in politics more, right? Had the opportunity to do that, to meet more members of Congress and what they were doing, and kind of built some relationships that way and friendships through that. And so I kind of talked to a couple of them and picked their brain and kind of thought, like, well, what would you think about me running? And so a couple of them were, some asked why, are you sure you really want to do this? And some were like, yeah, we think you'd be good. We could use you. And so that's kind of what led me to run there in 2016 for the first time. I mean, that was in 2016 after the 2016 election. I ran in 2018, the first time around. It did not win my re-election in 2020. We flipped a red to blue seat there that covered parts of Orange, LA, and San Bernardino County. But I ran again here 4 years later after spending 4 years in the administration at the Department of Defense as an Undersecretary of Defense, and then decided to leave there so I could run again in 2024.
Okay, so I'm gonna get back to that timeline in a sec, but keeping it real, without the money, you couldn't have run, right?
You could have, but it helped, right? It definitely helped. A lot of it was self-funded. When we ran the first time, it actually became one of the most expensive races. I think it probably still is probably the most expensive congressional race that there ever was in 2018.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me get this right. You lost in 2016.
No, I didn't. 2016 was when I made the decision.
Oh, right.
I could do more.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So you win the first election in 2018.
Right.
Right. So then you get unseated in 2020 because it's a tough purple district, right? Or red to purple kind of district, right? Then there's redistricting in 2020?
Yes. So 2022 became the new district lines. Yeah.
Right. So then you run again in
24.
In 24, and you won again. So now this is your second time around in Congress.
Right.
And in between, did you always know you wanted to run again, or?
I did not think I would run again. I was actually happy, at the Pentagon doing what I was doing, and I had thought I would finish that up. I would do, the 24 after the 24 election. Then we'll kind of see what happens next. But some people approached me. Grace Napolitano was going to retire, and so they said, "Hey, we think you should run again if you're thinking about it." And I actually was like, I'm not thinking about it, but I think that kind of planted the seed, and people again encouraged me and said, "You should do this," and I did. So I left my job at the Pentagon so I could go and run again, and was able to win this time around.
So that means you've both won and lost in a purple district, right?
Yeah.
Won, lost, won.
Yeah,
right?
this district is a lot bluer now.
This one's more blue.
Right.
Okay, so, but you did win and lose in a purple district. So, were you able to ascertain why win one time and lose another time? What was the difference maker in the same district?
You know, I've kind of thought about that I haven't thought about it actually for a long time, but you know, I think there were things, right? And I told people, look, I am who I am. This is what I stand for, and you can either like me or, you know, choose not to support me again, right? And I think a lot of people did support me, right? But you know, I came out for the impeachment, which I did not think helped me in my district. And you know, there was one guy who actually said, God, you know, he thanked me for helping me out with his VA issues. And it was like, I just wish you were a Republican so I could vote for you. Now that person just already made up his mind that he was just gonna vote Republican. And we were kind of worried, and we talked about this, right? It's that in that district, you know, people were tired of Trump. They wanted to get rid of him. But there was almost kind of like, but we want to keep the check in place. And so you know, Biden did win the district in 20, but I lost the seat there.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And so I lost by less, but it was about 1% that we lost by.
So do you think
So I think a lot of people were voting for Biden, but they also made the decision, well, I'll vote Democrat
split the
here.
ticket?
Yeah, split the ticket.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get to current day in 1 second, but last thing on that. In your experience now, having run a bunch of times and won and lost, like I said, do you think it's more local issues or do you think it's more national issues that make the difference? Like, you know, national tide versus, oh no, what's happening in the district?
You know, to me, I think it's a mixture of both, right? I think what's going on in the district is important, and I really try to keep my focus on there, and that does help there. But I think there are times where national issues do kind of take over, and what, you know, when things are really going on, and it's like the headlines or something big's going on, that really kind of influences, I think, people's decisions on how they vote, right? But I think economically, you know, economics always play a big role, right? And I think right now, when you kind of think of 2020, the economy was not doing so good under Trump, and you know, we're just going to vote out whoever's in office there, right? And that probably kind of was a factor, you know, too, as well.
And probably in 2018 to keep a check on Trump, right? So in that particular district. So that's interesting. Okay, now let's go to today. So your Democrats are in the minority. Huge conversations about, well, what should we do? You know, we've lost our way. The polling's at 27% for the Democratic Party. Hasn't been that low in polling history. So first, are there conversations internally in the caucus, like all the time, some of the time, no time, where you guys get together and go, all right, who's got strategy? What do you think? Plan A, plan B, et cetera, or no?
I mean, there's conversations out there, and there are things where people are getting there, and we are trying to connect with people, right? But everybody has to kind of manage their own district in a sense too, right? Because what goes, you know, in a blue district is not going to go the same. You know, a blue district in New York is not going to be the same as a blue district in Texas or as a purple district, you know, somewhere else, right? Like in a southern state. And so you have to really kind of be focused on your thing there and what's going on there, and really pay attention there and make sure you got the pulse of your district. And again, right, I always kind of laugh when, you know, you hear these messages and they say, oh, when you go back, go get on local TV when you're back in your district. Nobody gives a damn about the congressman here. You know, you can't, that may work in Iowa, that may work in Louisiana, but in Los Angeles, where it's the second, you know, largest media market, they don't give a damn about their members of Congress, right? We're a dime a dozen over here. There's a lot of us, and so it's not easy to kind of do that, right?
To get the message out, et cetera.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So, but it is a little question. Like, does the caucus ever get together? And let's make up a hypothetical here. Hakeem Jeffries says, "Hey guys, this is the direction we think in leadership we should go." and then they provide space for someone else to raise their hand and go, well, I think maybe we should go in a different direction, right? Does that happen?
We have a caucus meeting every well, I won't say every day. At this time, it'll be around Tuesday. Next Tuesday is the flying day, so the caucus meeting will be on Wednesday. But it's usually either Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on what day we fly in. But yeah. And those are open discussions, right? Where people are allowed to kind of talk about what's going on and give their 2 cents and their thoughts about what we need to do and what changes need to be made. So yeah, there is a forum for that.
And do people ever brawl there, or is this super polite? Like, no, I'm serious, because like they're progressives and the more conservative members really disagree on a bunch of things. I mean, I think they do. They say they do publicly. So do they disagree internally? There's disagreement, right? But it's never ever that I've seen where it's come to like a brawl or anything. No, I don't mean like physically, but like more like raised voices, things like that.
No, I don't think I've never really seen that, right? Look, I think you'll hear about that like in the Republican caucuses, right? Where they're kind of there, like, people are getting up and they're shouting at each other and you need to get in line and to do this. And I have never ever seen that in one of our meetings. But that doesn't mean people don't disagree. And I think it is kind of polite in the way that we kind of do that, right? Look, you have the time, there's the caucus meeting where you bring that things up. And then if you have disagreements or things like that, you can go and approach other members. When you're usually the best time to do that is when you're all there on the floor for votes. And it's where you can talk about these things, right? And so,
yeah. And one more that's slightly more collegial, and then I'll ask about policy, which is, do you guys ever go bowling together? Like forget bowling, but seriously, like do people go out for a drink? Oh, hey, Susie, how you doing? Let's go out for drinks, or etc. Does that happen with some regularity?
It does, right? Some are organized, some are just kind of like, hey, let's go, why don't we go to the Dem Club and go get a drink, or let's go get dinner over here. But I mean, actually I'm going to a dinner on, I think the 9th. Yeah, well, I don't know, I gotta check the calendar. But I'm going to a dinner. It's gonna be a bunch of my freshman colleagues from the Dem side. I think Adam Schiff is gonna join us, and it's a little more organized, but it is there, right, where you do that. And actually we had a good one where another one of my freshman colleagues like hosted a dinner at her apartment, her place last week.
Okay, that's good. I like that. And you get to be a freshman all over again.
Yeah,
so that's fun.
I'm a redshirt freshman this time around.
Redshirt freshman. There you go. Okay, so tell me what you think is the right direction for the Democratic Party.
Look, I think we need to reconnect with people, right? And the thing that really kind of upsets me more is that I hear about all the things you hear is that when it comes to economic issues, that people put more trust in the Republican Party and Donald Trump and the Republican Party than Democrats do. But you look at the last 3 Republican presidential administrations, they've all ended in financial chaos. And so why aren't we out there talking about that more? Why aren't we kind of saying like, it's always taken Democrats to get the House back in order. It always hasn't been pretty, but it's gotten done and we've done it, right? And so these are the things that we need to talk about. That's what the message that we have to talk to working people to let them know that you've always been better off with us.
So 2 things about that. Yeah. So one is messaging, one is substance. On the messaging part, I literally don't know why they can't get that message out, and that's what I'm curious to ask you about. Because, so for example, if I'm on a show and they some right winger starts telling me about how they like to balance budgets, I go, nonsense.
They've never done it.
The last Republican president to balance a budget was Dwight Eisenhower, right? And so all they do is massive tax cuts for the rich, add a huge amount to the deficit, etc. So I know I've done it. It's easy. Why do I never see Democrats doing it on TV?
Yeah, it's something that's got to change, right? And we need to talk about this more, and we need to talk about the financial ruin that we are headed down with this current president, just like how he led us towards financial ruin, the last time around, right? He only wants to take credit for things that are going well and trying to pass we've had the worst quarter financially that we had in recent history that I can remember, right? I think that anybody can remember. And he's still trying to blame it on Joe Biden when it was him who led us down this way, right? But these are the things that we need to talk about, and we got to find a way to connect with people.
Does Representative Jeffries Leader Jeffries, I guess, does he go, all right, look, Gil, I need you on KCAL and Susie, I need you at KGO in San Francisco and blah, 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 and let's go, or does that kind of coordination not happen?
That doesn't really happen. We have the DPCC, which is right, like our messaging arm, or trying to get out there, right, that we have within the party. And they are kind of pushing, hey, here's the messaging that we should be, these are the items that you're hitting, right? Oh, you're in the district. You should be great if you could do these events, kind of focus like last time around, it was like, oh, okay, let's focus on Social Security and Medicare, right? Let's do events kind of focused on those issues, right? Get on TV, which always, again, easy to say, not very hard, very hard to do here in Los Angeles, right? Which is but this is one of the reasons why we're here now, right? This is the platform that, people are going to get their news from, right? They're coming on social media, they're watching podcasts, and this is the turn that we have to make in order to connect with people, because, let's be frank, right? The traditional media is kind of dying.
Yep, and you got your own podcast, like I said earlier. I was on it. We'll come back to that in a sec. But so in terms of the direction, so the Republicans are bad at financial management and the management of the economy and the budget. And those are facts. Donald Trump added more to the deficit than any other president in U.S. history. That's a point I have not heard a single Democrat ever make in media. I don't know why. It just drives me crazy they don't make that point, right? And it allows the Republicans to seem like they're fiscally responsible when they're drunk sailors. Right. No offense, I know you were in the Navy. Okay, when it comes to the budget, but how about the Democrats? Because when they get into power, they say we're going to do this, this, and this, and the general feeling and my feeling is they don't. So paid family leaves at 84%. They never passed it. Yeah. Joe Biden said he was going to do minimum wage. He took it out of the first bill. He said he was going to do public option. Didn't even introduce it. So aren't people right to be frustrated about Democrats?
Yeah, I think you're right. Right, there is a frustration out there, and we're feeling it right now. And I think we felt it. In the presidential election, obviously, right, that people didn't get what they were told, right? But, things in Congress move very slowly. And, we do need a minimum wage, right? And Joe Biden, he couldn't get it in the bill, but he was able to do it for federal workers, right? So every employee that I had that worked for me, we raised their minimum wage and kind of do it, try to do what you can. He was able to do that through an executive order. Hopefully it stays that way. It doesn't get reversed.
Yeah, now that we're talking about it out loud, I'm a little worried. But okay, just don't say it in Washington.
Right.
Okay,
but
you're right to give Biden credit on that. Yeah. But it's not that he couldn't get it done. He took it out of the bill.
Yeah. Well, he was looking at the bigger picture, I think, right? And these are the things that we have to do. The infrastructure bill was massive, and it put a lot of people to work. The unions loved it, and I remember, one of the union guys was like, "We've never had so much work before," and that I can remember. And so that's kind of what he was looking at. That's what he was doing, and it's just unfortunate, like you said, right? The sacrificial lamb for that kind of became the minimum wage in order to get the bigger bill done.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know if you can answer or not, but. Like if there's a vote that's coming up on something like a higher minimum wage or anything along those lines, do donors come to you, National Restaurant Association or whoever, and go, you better not? Or a more subtle, sophisticated, nuanced way of saying, you better not?
I think, people always kind of come to you with sides, right? Like, hey, this is what I believe, this is what I believe. I won't say the company, or I won't say it, right, but AM radio is becoming a thing right now, right? And I've had some people say like, do we still need this in the car? And I'm like, well, here's my thoughts on it, right? I actually think we do, right? Because it can become, when emergencies happen, AM radios, it's the frequency goes farther. You can. That may be your only lifeline that you have, right? If something ever really did happen where communications kind of went down, AM radio may be your last, way to connect. And so I think it is still important to have it in there. But, to me, it's if people come at me with issues, I'm going to tell them, okay, I hear you, but here's what I think on the issue. If they don't, especially if it is different. And I'm going to vote the way that I feel that I need to vote, right? And the way that I feel that the people in the district who elected me want me to vote.
All right, one more on that again, I don't know if you can answer, but has there ever been a vote you had where the donor then took away the money afterwards because you didn't vote in their direction?
No, but again, I will say this too, right? Most of my elections, actually, the two have been self-funded, so it kind of
makes it easier.
It does kind of make it easier in that sense, where I can kind of go and say like, hey, yeah, I'm going to vote the way I want to vote, right? I'm listening to the guy who did that.
Yeah, no, you've got that luxury, which is great.
Yeah.
So you signed the populist plank today, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome, and it's a huge range of people that sign it, all the way from independents like Dan Osborne in Nebraska to progressives like Ro Khanna to yourself, etc. So that's got the 6 policy planks, anti-war, money out of politics, paid family leave, higher minimum wage, lower drug prices, lower housing prices. So do you think that that's the right direction for the Democratic Party to focus on that kind of economic populism, the core Democratic policy issues?
Yeah, look, I think the plank that you have going forward, right, is they're all issues that I think Democrats should be on board with, and I would be hard to find a Democrat that wouldn't agree with those issues.
Well, that's nice to hear. Okay,
yeah.
That's great. So that's on tyt.com or populistplank.com. And I like that it's uniting people, but there are issues that don't unite people, right? So what's the sense in the caucus about culture wars, identity politics? And look, a lot of times it gets thrust on you from the Republicans. Yeah. They'll do an attack or a bill against trans people or this people or that people. They'll take people who have a legal right to stay here and send them to a dungeon in El Salvador. Then what are you going to do? You got to fight back, etc. But is there a feeling in the air in DC like that stuff didn't help us? We got to get away from that.
Look, there's always going to be, I think, somebody who says, yeah, we need to stay away from that, right? That's just kind of like. It's like the Republicans are just throwing bait out there for us to kind of like attach to, and then they're just going to go off and say like, oh, that's all they care about, that's all they want to do. And there are people like that, but it is important, I think, to kind of address these issues, right? I was a diversity and inclusion officer. Diversity is very important to me. When I was at the Pentagon, I was a diversity and inclusion officer.
If you were still there, they would have fired you.
Oh yeah, I would have been gone. And the fact is, it's a lot of those diversity issues that we were implementing were signed into law by Donald Trump.
That's another thing nobody
The position that he created, the position I had was created that he signed into law, right? And it was something that they did talk about right there. Esper talked about diversity in the military and how important it is and that we need it. But now it's again, he's running away from that. But it is something that needs to be brought, there and kind of brought up, right, and kind of thrown back at him. It's like, everything you're undoing right now was actually done by you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good point. And even on some trans issues that were. Trump was the guy who did it in the first place, right?
Well, that one he's never been on the right side there, I will say, right? He did always try and get our transgender service members out, right? And
he couldn't do it the first time around.
Yeah.
And so the reason I said that, sorry to interrupt, is because that famous ad against Kamala Harris, where that policy of giving undocumented trans detainees free surgery, that actually existed in the Trump administration. They made it seem like, oh, he would never do that, but it actually was the policy in the Trump administration. So that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. No, it is. But look, I think we need to defend people that are being attacked right now. We need to stick up for them, so that needs to happen. But I think some people, we got to be cautious of going down that rabbit hole too, though, right? I think of kind of being led there to kind of where it becomes, like you said, right? This was his policy. That's what he did during his administration, but they've attached this to us, right? We can't. Look, we need to defend, but we got to be cautious.
Yeah, and so I don't think it's that hard, but I get that some people have a difficult time drawing the lines. So they take someone who court has ordered to stay here, and they ship them to a dungeon in El Salvador. No, there's a court order. That's not close, right? And this isn't identity politics. There's a freaking court order, right? And you're violating the Constitution when you don't listen to the courts and due process.
He couldn't answer the simple question, right? Do you need to defend the Constitution? And he said, I don't know if that's my responsibility.
It's definitely your responsibility.
I mean, it's the first thing you said, right? After you said state your name, after you state your name, it's the next two lines are, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And how could you not know? You said it, right? You took an oath to do it.
Yeah, and look, I don't know how you feel about this, so I'll ask you. Like, there's 10 transgender athletes in the NCAAs, right? There's 500,000 athletes overall. To me, that's not the hill to die on. And you could have any opinion. My opinion is that trans girls should be allowed to play in girls' sports in high school. Okay, because I say, hey, you know what? I don't want you checking the genitals of any of the kids. That's crazy to me, right? And other people disagree, and I say, okay, we disagree, but we're going to move on and we're going to talk about other issues as well, right? But some say no, this is the hill to die on, and if you don't think the professional sports leagues should be forced into having those women, then you're not a sufficiently left wing. What's your take on that?
Look, I'm more concerned about the thousands of service members that are being forced out of the military right now.
I agree with that, yeah.
Because of, let's face it, they're transgender, right? And these are people who are performing and are doing their job. We talked to a group of them just last week. Great fitness, great fitness reports, right? And even their chain of command can't believe this is going on. That we're taking good people out who are doing good, great at their jobs and performing well. I'm more concerned about that than I am.
100%. Look, again, people can disagree with me, it's okay. I'm used to it. You don't have a constitutional right to play in the WNBA, but you do have a right to be treated equally like every other citizen. And if you're willing to sign up for the military, something I wasn't willing to do, they're willing to risk their lives, then we should be thrilled to have them.
And less than 1% makes this commitment of the nation's population in order to do that, right? And then why would you kick, and this is an administration, the own Secretary of Defense, claims that we are gonna be about merit. Well, where's the merit in this, right? You're kicking good people out who are performing and doing their job well.
Yeah, if they said, hey, we've got 3 or 4 people that are not performing, here's the results, sorry, but you gotta go. That's one thing. It's another thing to say, I'm kicking you all out, whether you are or you aren't performing. Right? That becomes kind of a reverse DEI, right? I don't really care if you're fit. I don't really care if you're serving with commendations perfectly, etc. I'm gonna kick you out because of who you are. See, that's the Republicans playing identity politics.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about the podcast. Why do a podcast and what's it about?
I think, they told me I gotta stop saying you think, right? But when I say I think, it means I know. We needed to be able to connect with people. And like I said here, in the LA media market, it's tough. There's a bunch of members of Congress, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And so we wanted to do the podcasts as a way to kind of, to be able to connect with people, to talk about the issues, to kind of, help me get out there and to connect with people and let them know, like, here's what we're talking about, right? Because like people are like, why don't we ever see you on TV? And then why aren't we seeing you do this? I'm like, well, you know what? Now you can go to my podcast. Now you can watch us there. There you can hear us talk about the issues, and you can see where I kind of stand on the issues. So that's why I wanted to do it, and I've connected with some young kids. that know a lot more about this than I do. And so they're kind of actually guiding me through the process.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job too. They get you on social media, you know, and spreading the word. All right. So, by the way, if you want to see us together on Representative Cisneros' podcast, we also have that up on tyt.com/press, because whenever I do an outside show, we put that up on there, so that you can check that out, and we'll put a link in the description box for your podcast, so people can go to it directly.
Right.
So, Representative Cisneros, I hope we get a chance to talk. You know, when votes come up and other issues come up, keep in touch and see the direction of the Democratic Party.
Well, hey, thanks for having me, and please, definitely reach out, right? Anytime, any issue, anything that's going on in Washington, happy to give you my thoughts and what's going on there.
All right, perfect. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.